Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we want to give our sponsors a shout out. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director, or I've got a direct connection to, and I'm highly recommending that you use them too. So take 3 minutes, listen to our sponsorship shout outs, then listen to our interview, and then go visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Gipper for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Go to Gipper.com. Their team is going to have you creating world-class marketing content in seconds. It's going to help you celebrate your athletes and promote your teams. Gipper's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college programs. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their scoreboards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. It's digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, more customization. Go to hometownticketing.com to find out all the things they can do for you and your athletic program. We'd like to thank Ohio University's online Master of Science in Athletic Administration, too. This affordable 20-month online master's program focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. And when you finish, you're not only going to have your master's degree, you're going to have 11 NIAAA leadership training courses to go towards your RAA or CAA. You're also going to be part of a nationwide network with connections in K-12 athletics across the country. Get started. All you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA. Check them out today. We'd like to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance, communicating with your coaches, uploading forms and rosters. Home Campus is going to do everything you do as an AD faster. It's going to do it better. It's going to give you a lot of time back in your schedule. Go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We want to say thanks to Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and ended up with little to show for it? Stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school, tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you found it. Go to snapraise.com. We'd also like to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to showcase your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to showcase your school's unique history and your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. We'd like to say thanks to our friends at Huddle. Go to huddle.com. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to showcase all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. Student athletes loved the way that Huddle allowed them to experience athletics at the highest level. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. We'd also like to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents, your coaches, your student athletes, you're really missing out. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you. They're going to connect you to people you already hear from, the gripers and complainers, but that's only a small percentage. They're also going to connect you to the 98% that support your program. And that information is tremendously valuable when you're talking to a frustrated parent or your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com to get started. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD Podcast. We're staying right here in Florida today, and we're going to Gainesville, sort of. Our guest is Shelley Lyle. Shelley has an incredible background in athletics, was an outstanding high school athlete. She played soccer for the University of Florida Gator soccer team, continues to work in their athletic department, sport management, and she's also a very successful entrepreneur. We're going to hear about all of that and more. But Shelley Lyle, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thanks, Jake. It's great to be with you. Honored to be a guest on your podcast.
Well, we are honored that you are sharing some of your busy time with us. For our listeners, we're recording this in April, so it's going to be very timely by the time you hear it. Shelley, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up, maybe take us up through your own high school and college days, and then we'll take a break. But what's the Shelley Lyle origin story?
I grew up in Tampa, Florida. So I'm a Floridian, and loved growing up there. Went to a really small Christian school now called Cambridge Christian, and it really kind of started playing multiple sports at a pretty young age, and grew up with a pretty athletic background. My dad played basketball for the Army and like represented the Army overseas. My uncle on my mom's side also played basketball with him and then played at Alabama, and just had a lot of cousin played soccer. So just had a lot of family athleticism and grew up around sports. Pretty frequently watching games, going to games, and really fell in love with soccer when I was about 9. So fun fact, I think I was 6 and I played for the first time, and I did not like soccer. It was not my favorite. But I returned when I was about 9 and it became a great competitive outlet for me. I was and still am, to be fair, very competitive person when playing sports. It has not left. And I just loved getting to play. And then I played club and did the travel and all of that high competition all over the US for HC United is what it was called then. And the Tampa Bay Heather, which doesn't exist anymore, it kind of merged into that club. And loved it. Really was pretty young and knew like I want to play in college. Got recruited from various universities. My top 3 were LSU, VCU, and UCF actually. So I ended up going to VCU up in Richmond first on a scholarship. So that would be Chris and Denise Brown, who coached at USF for a while now, and played for them, and then just missed being home, missed Florida, missed family, and transferred back at UF. And it's a wild story. I won't go into how that all happened, but I loved it. Got to play a lot of minutes my whole college career, which I'm grateful for, and really just loved being a Florida athlete in all those ways. And then went on to play for the U23 national team actually after I graduated for a brief couple months. Got to travel with the team, and it was an amazing experience. I wasn't the national team player growing up, so it was very cool to get that time and that level. And then really kind of debated on if I would go and play pro or would go overseas. I really wanted to go overseas, but didn't end up getting a green card to Switzerland about a week before I graduated college. So that was a bit of a bummer, and ended up playing 5 years semi-pro. So that was kind of my early youth and college experience. Did you want me to go into all of the rest? Or are we gonna?
Well, you've given me a couple of real quick questions here. You mentioned Cambridge Christian. One of my great friends is their current athletic director, Mark Butler. Was he there when you were at Cambridge Christian?
No, nope. I'm pretty old. I think he's newer. And no, he was not there when I was there. I actually went back and taught after as well. So I've seen a few ADs, but no, he was not mine. And it's been cool to watch how Cambridge Christian has grown, quite frankly. My nieces and nephew go there, and I'm always a big fan of that school.
Yeah, Mark's actually had me come back a couple of times and talk to their coaches on some different topics. Okay, here we go. Next question. Becky Burley, soccer coach. I use one of her videos that's on YouTube, part of her coaching program, where she tells the story of the green dot. Was the green dot there when you were a Gator soccer player?
Not when I played, but when I came back and was director of operations, I feel like the green dot was around. Like there were
Yeah.
all, she brought in a lot of her work with What Drives Winning. And so there would be little remnants of like, here's the, different elements she always would talk about, the green dot being one of them, like the golf ball was another one. And,
Mhm.
so yes, I'm very familiar.
Okay, well, and again, that's one of my favorite, I'm going to say professional development tools. I just got back from presenting in Oregon at their AD conference, and I used, her video in one of my presentations. And when I would share that with my own coaches as an AD, invariably they would come up and say, "That's one of the greatest things, I've ever seen." And so, shout out to Becky Burley and Gator Soccer and all that good stuff. Your international, or excuse me, the national experience, that had to be just, and you said it was really cool. What's something that really comes back to you about an experience with the team, training, competing, traveling, that still impacts you today?
I think if I'm fully transparent on this one, the reality is I just remember, I think, being a competitive person, highly critical of myself, the pressure is extreme, right? Like you go into that environment and it's not even necessarily the coaches by any means. It's just the reality of like, you've got to step your game up. Like you're on another level now and you're wearing the USA crest. Like there's nothing that's like that. Right. And so I think for me, it did come out with a high level of stress, but also just an amazing time to meet players who I played against for years, right? At that point. And just to see what the lifestyle of that world is like was, yeah, really cool. We did definitely traveled across the world and that was very cool. So I mean, I think it's, yeah, as much as I want to be like, it was this amazing experience because it really was, it also taught me a lot about like mental toughness and the nature of that level of sports not always being um as easy or as ideal as you think it's going to be in the moment because you're so busy trying to improve and to get better and to not stress about staying in the pool that you don't necessarily sit back and go, this is so cool, it's just all like this is amazing, like this is a dream, so but I'm so grateful for it. And I can't, like when I got the phone call, I'll never forget the phone call when they call you and say, hey, can you get on a plane
Mm.
in a week to go to England and represent the United States of America on the U23 national team. So
Well, no, absolutely. It's something I can't even imagine. I like to say injuries and a lack of talent kept me out of the National Football League. But yeah, that phone call, that had to be cool. Let's go and take our first break, but we are going to come back with more. For our listeners, our guest is Shelley Lyle. You just heard about her athletic prowess, but she has a tremendous background in athletics. She's going to share that with us and more. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'd like to say thank you to Gipper for their support of the podcast. Go to Gipper.com. Start creating world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. It's going to help you celebrate your athletes and promote your teams. Gipper's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college athletic programs. It's professional graphic design made easy. How easy? Well, it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We'd also like to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing for their support. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. The folks at Hometown Ticketing will show you step by step how to set up and sell tickets online, not just for your athletic events, but for things like school plays and concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. It's digital ticketing that offers more. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Shelley Lyle. Shelley, again, you shared with our listeners, your experience with the national team. That's just got to be the coolest thing. But after your playing career was ending, what were some of your early career steps that brought you to where you're at today?
Yeah, I think integrated probably 5 years of playing semi-professional soccer and then doing different jobs, whether that was teaching or in coaching. At Cambridge Christian was 1 year, doing private soccer training, kind of all these different various coaching. And I look back now and think like that was my athlete development passion to begin with. Like I coached, but I always cared about the player more than I cared about the performance. And so I did that. And then I also helped start a soccer ministry in the inner city of Charlotte and kind of worked for Missionary Athletes International for a little bit and did some global missions with soccer as well throughout those years. And then decided, really felt called to go to Rwanda and work for a international school there called Kicks. And through that, I was an athletic director and a soccer coach and a commissioner of a soccer league, also known as football there. But so those are, yeah, wore some various hats there and really loved the international. I worked with students from all and players from all over the world, and then also had to learn how to, show up at different high schools there and ask for their athletic director or who represented the sports and started to help build and organize a league for the teams, which was really cool, and also a large learning curve. And then I moved back to the US to get my graduate degree at UF in sport management. And then I worked for Becky Burley as her program coordinator, which really means director of ops in most universities, and integrated athlete development there. Really fell in love with athlete development, thought I would go back into sport for development work and live abroad, but really loved the idea of holistic care for athletes. And so then I transitioned into the academic side now. So I work for the UF Sport Management Department, where I teach athlete development, and then I career coach, and I'm the director of engaged learning for our online graduate program.
We're going to talk about that in a second, but I want to go back to your athletic director experience. We've had a number of international ADs on before. Um, when you first arrived there, you probably had a vision in your mind about what you wanted to do and how you were going to be an athletic director. How did that vision um coincide and fit with the reality of working in an international situation?
Yeah, the funny thing is I would love to say like, yeah, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had this whole plan. And that was actually not the case. I got the job. I had been in Rwanda and I had come out run into a woman at a coffee shop who was the head of school when I was on a short-term mission trip. And then she interviewed me for a different position, actually a third grade position. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'd take that, but they came up with this other role of an AD. And I was like, well, yeah, that's literally my resume in a nutshell. So I was excited about that. But that was October, November. And then I showed up in January 1st. Like I didn't even start on a regular school year. So I was like jumped right in and helped create a position that didn't exist yet. And so, yeah, I don't think I had this amazing master plan yet, but I knew how to lead, and I was excited about the opportunity to do that for that school and just see how that would grow. So yeah, it was also a big learning curve as well.
Um, looking at your time there as an athletic administrator, what was your biggest challenge and what did you do to, meet that and turn it from a challenge into a success story?
I think the cultural differences is a huge one from like, if you haven't traveled much, different cultures have different timing. So when we say a game starts at 4 o'clock p.m., that might be 4:30 for them. And there's a lot of different variables in that. Maybe their bus broke down or isn't working, or maybe their kid, so I think I had to learn to start to accommodate the culture and the cultures because it wasn't just Rwandese. Like we played a Rwandese school, but we played a more Belgium school and a French Eco Francais. So you kind of had to really embrace that and help your coaches who are a lot of Americans or internationals who have different ideas of what timing would look like, and help everyone and parents, because you had a lot of different parents too to go, it's okay, like we'll wait for them to come. And I think that was a challenge and also an opportunity though too. So I'll never forget the day I sat in a room with Rwandan referees, I do not speak Rwandese. So I had an interpreter, and I will say that was like, I just thought to myself, wow, like I'm this woman in an all male group, and having an interpreter share like what are the rules of this league and how are we going to abide by them and how are you reffing for that. So that was a really interesting position to be in as well, and I grew so much from it. The challenge, I mean, it was intimidating in a lot of ways, but yeah, definitely an opportunity to learn.
I'm going to go and follow up on that. And you and I talked before we started recording, women in this profession, certainly underrepresented, now take that to another country, another culture where, women, period, might not be part of that conversation. So what, obviously, what you're talking about. You're a professional. How did you get that across to to the men in that room so that they said, hey, she knows what she's talking about?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Well, I have to give it to my interpreter, and he was a coworker who interpreted for me actually. And I respect him enough to know that he was on my side and sharing what I said and also enforcing that. Like, I think that was a barrier for us, some of the reffing and the rules, and so you kind of had to trust the process, and you also had to deal with athletes who became disappointed or like really discouraged when, or teams when the reffing was really unfair and biased.
Oh man, that's being a longtime official in high school basketball and then track and field in college. That's a subject for another podcast, but no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let's go ahead and fast forward to you mentioned that you became director of ops for Becky Burley's soccer program, national program. Um, I'm going to, the how did it happen? She obviously knew you from your playing days, but how did that job develop for you, and what are some things that you remember that you're particularly proud of?
Sure. I think, starting, Becky having played for her and then getting to work was actually really cool to be on the flip side of it. Having been a player, you get that one experience of what the program, what the system looks like. So being, program coordinator or director of ops, yeah, you're kind of in the ins and outs of all the background and all the effort that takes to show up at a game on time, and to get on flights. And so you have to navigate a lot of details, and sometimes a lot of opinions as far as like you're never going to please everyone. So yeah, but I love the players, and I love the coaches too, right? So I felt like I had a voice there. I was definitely given a large voice, having been an athlete. I felt respected by the players because I'd been in their shoes. And so yeah, I really loved that opportunity. And then I developed it in the off season into some athlete development support. So bringing in different speakers, after asking the athletes like, hey, who would you want to hear from? And so, from a mental skills or in a sleep person talking about sleep to teaching them how to change a tire or change their oil on their scooter. It kind of was a broad range, but yeah, I loved the opportunity to help them develop as people, along as well as players.
No, and that's, I think, a great time for us to take a break. And when we come back, I want to take that deeper dive into the things that you're currently doing now with University of Florida, both in education, in the sport management program, and athlete success, off of the field. So let's go and take that break. Our guest today is Shelley Lyle. You've heard a little bit about her background, but there's a lot more to come. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We'd like to say thank you to Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards for their support. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Of course, we used it for home games, but we also used it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Their products are tremendously versatile and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com to find out more. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We'd also like to say thank you to the Ohio University Online Master of Science in Athletic Administration for their support. This affordable 20-month online program focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. And when you finish, you're not only going to have your master's degree, you're going to have 11 NIAAA leadership training courses to go towards your RAA or your CAA. You're also going to be part of a national network with connections in K-12 athletics across the country. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA. Check them out today. And we'd like to thank Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? Uploading rosters and digital forms, communicating with your coaches, your parents, your student athletes, you name it. Home Campus does it better, does it faster, and it's going to give you a lot more time on your hands. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Shelley Lyle with the University of Florida Sport Management Program. Shelley, you wear a lot of hats in your role. You know, there's education, there's sport education, there's life education. So share a little bit, you know, transitioning out of the athletic ops with soccer. How did this part of your current job develop, and what are some of the things that you do with the University of Florida athletes? Boy, I'm stumbling today.
That's okay. Sure. So happened three and a half years ago, I transitioned to this position, and it's kind of continually grown, and kind of morphed in various ways. But it was 2020, and I think Becky Burley might have mentioned, she was pivoting. She was coaching still, but was, I think still good friends with Dr. Sagas, who had been my boss various years as a GA. And so anyways, long story short, basically there was this open position and need for someone to career coach some of the students. And he was kind of on this path of looking into research to talk about people's stories and athletes' stories and the transition they go through after they're completed their sport career. And that was really intriguing to me, like identity and all of that. And athlete development was always something I was passionate about and interested in. So I was like, okay, I'll take the part-time role for now. And it kind of moved into was a full-time position. And then I was director of engaged learning and outreach, which meant like I career coach and onboard our students and then help do networking events and connect them with industry professionals. So that could be athletes, but that is also other students who are just interested in the sports world, who want to work in the sports world. And then I co-lectured with Dr. Sagas for the athlete development course, because that's what he created. And then after he moved on about a year ago now, he's at University of South Carolina now as a dean. I took over the position, and so I teach the athlete development, the courses for our master's student, and then I also teach our athlete development specialist certificate program. That is, we collaborate with PADS to offer those certificates as well. So that's a little bit of how I moved into this position.
You know, looking at your own experiences, which again, you're much younger than me, but you're not a kid. Looking at your experiences so far, you've had a lot to share with these students in the master's program. You know, what are some of the courses that you teach and some of the subjects and, let's say, best practices in those courses that you share with a particular interest to those students?
I mean, the athlete development course is like my passion. I feel like that's the course that I've loved, just because it gives a broad range. We kind of talk about all, various modules about physical literacy, branding, media, mental health is like one of my favorite parts about that. So how to prepare people to talk with athletes about mental health and know how to refer them on. We also talk about, what is athlete development in the world, and what is identity and transition for athletes when they go to make a shift at levels or out of sport. So that's my most, I think that's where my passion really lies. And then I also would say I have taught athlete career transitions for a group of students, and mostly student athletes, a couple of years ago, and really did love that class. Now I don't currently teach it, but that's another place that I really enjoy. And I really love bridging the gap too between, our students and what they're hoping to do, and helping educate them on how to work with athletes as a whole, or just break into the industry, because it is very difficult. But so yeah, the career coaching I do enjoy to help, students just pursue the places that are a good fit for them as well, and not just I love sports and I want to play in sports. I think there's this really glamorous idea of the athletic world and wanting to work in it, but I'm probably sometimes the bearer of bad news of like, okay, are you going to grind? Are do you know what you're stepping into? Where's your passion and your gifting and all of that wrapped up in one for a good place for you to land and pursue? So yeah, that's kind of a big part of it as well.
All right. I've had a couple of folks on in similar positions, but very few have had your background. So here's my question. And if I am completely out of line and off base, you need to call me on it. Okay. Um, you competed at literally the highest level. So there's that skills that you were born with, the skills that you developed, the training, the education, the focus. Okay. You were there. Okay. You did it. Not everybody is going to be able to have that experience. Maybe the physical gifts aren't there, maybe the motivation, the drive isn't there. And yet we see more and more student athletes at the collegiate level that are struggling with transitioning from their role as an athlete. And we're also seeing and hearing more about it even at the high school level, when we know that only 6% or less are going to go to the college level. So here's the old cranky retired AD and coach approach. Hey, suck it up. Life goes on. Get a job. I'm not that bad, but I'm going to the extreme. Okay. How do you work with the student athletes that you see? And again, you're at a Division I, Power Five, the highest level for college. How do you work with athletes that are struggling with that identity? "Oh, I'm no longer a college athlete." I'm not talking about the catastrophic injury, they blow their knee out and it's sudden. This is that roster player, and now they're a senior. How do you work with those athletes? And again, I'm being very extreme with that response. That's not how I would approach it. But how do you
Yeah,
deal with
no.
that?
Yeah, I love that you're referring like, no, this is the old school way. Cause I think that is, that is what the language that, oh, it's fine. But I think the reality is, when it comes to them transitioning doesn't necessarily happen in university. That's the tricky part. Because if you have you have a spring sport athlete and they're finishing and then not moving into the pros, then they're like a baseball player still going to be competing after they've graduated. And yet, like, when are they transitioning? So there isn't always care for them post last game. And sometimes they don't necessarily want to talk about it nor engage that, because at least at a Power Five level, you have a lot of athletes who might go on to play. Now, not all of them. I've worked with both those who do and don't go on. And so it's a really sensitive area. I think you have to be really, really mindful that they aren't necessarily ready to engage those topics. But I encourage the exploration of their giftings and some of their other identity roles that can help them explore different things outside of their sport. Because I mean, in all fairness, though, they've been told by a lot of people, they've had a lot of verbal affirmation that they are the best, that this is who they are, and how they play does matter, and it's the only thing that matters. And so it's really hard in what I'd say is a pressure cooker at times, to think that, like, they don't necessarily want to think outside of that bubble, because they want to stay so focused. And there's
Right.
some verbal affirmation for that too, like just be here, be present. And then they're not sure when they're ready to like step out of that, and who is the safe person. So even talking to them about like, hey, your relationships could shift like pretty drastically in the future, because you've identified with these people, or even your family have identified with you as like you're their son or daughter. So there's a whole lot of topics I like to talk to them about and just kind of help prepare them, because it typically happens, I think, post graduation, when they're really like, wait, what am I doing with my life? And they don't have all the services, and they don't have the team, and they don't have those kind of cushions to land on when they are really struggling.
No, and again, that's a fantastic answer. And anything we can do to help, students and student athletes, get on with their life or experience success and happiness. That's what coaches do. So again, really appreciate you sharing that point. We're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but let's do it now. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out, find out more about the University of Florida program and the things that you're going to share in your next segment, or just add you to their network, what's the best way that they can connect with Shelley Lyle?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Shelley Lyle. You can put University of Florida in, or integrative coaching, which I know we'll talk about. Those will both pop my name up. Would love to connect. Love to chat about all these topics. I'm very passionate about that. I'm sure you can hear that when I'm answering. And my email for UF is shell, SHELL 88 at ufl.edu. So feel free to send me an email as well.
Yeah, and I encourage you to connect. Just has a tremendous background, be a great resource for you as an AD or as a coach. We're going to take another break, but when we come back, Shelley is also a very successful entrepreneur in this area, and we're going to talk about her efforts in that area. So please come back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to our great friends at Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks on a fundraiser and got little, if any, return on investment? Well, stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms, but if you're looking for a fundraiser, you found it. Go to snapraise.com. We'd also like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and take a look at their interactive touchscreen. That's right, touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. vitalsignswalloffame.com. And we want to thank Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to work for all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Our coaches, our athletes, even our parents just loved all the tools that Huddle provided that let our student athletes experience sports at the highest level. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users. Go to huddle.com. Turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Shelley Lyle. You've already heard about her work with the University of Florida Sport Management Program and student athletes, but she also has her own business, Integrative Coaching. Shelley, share with our listeners a little bit about how it got started, what it is, and I guess most importantly, why they should be reaching out to you to get your services at their school with their student athletes.
Sure. So how it got started, I remember like it was yesterday being in Becky's office. So funny, after playing for her and working for you, you have a lot of time to be together. But we had a situation on the team and with one of our players, and I just thought to myself, it was maybe mental health issue challenge, and sitting with her talking about like what are we going to do to navigate the situation, what's the best steps and all of that, and feeling really underprepared in some ways. I'm like, we don't really know for sure the best steps or all of that. And also when one athlete has a challenge on a team, that can ripple out to a lot of athletes, in particular if they're rooming together and all the nature of that. That's a team sport for you, right? So after that, I was like, man, I would love to be more prepared on like how to navigate the mental health challenges we're seeing and things that go on for college athletes, and that and a couple other even personal things, I had reached out and seen this narrative focused trauma care training out of Seattle, and was like, this is interesting. This kind of talks about learning people's stories and how to integrate and kind of deal with different traumas. And so I started, I applied and got in, and have done 4 years of that trauma care training. And I'm currently a fellow for the program. But what I did after I started a couple years in was like, I would love to, really teach people how to just have conversations and listen well and engage the athletes on what they're experiencing, and help refer them, because I think that was kind of the gap I was seeing a few years ago, which is what I did and what I have done in our athlete development course is took the mental health module and really helped make it practical with examples and having people engage what they would do if they had an athlete with, Kevin Love is one of the videos, Michael Phelps is another video you'll interact with. And so yeah, that was kind of where it all started going. And then integrative coaching kind of came out of that. So I finished just 4 years of trauma care training and really wanted to work with athletes, loved the transition course I taught, and wanted to work with athletes and helping them holistically from a mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health perspective, process through difficult experiences, transition, identity crisis, sometimes injuries can be a really difficult place for athletes as they have to go through training and getting back on the field and things like that. So that's really what where it was born out of. And then so now working with those athletes and helping them process through those experiences, and then I also do some story work, which is more trauma care focused, and that's the general public, but I also have consulting and speaking engagements on helping athletes even at a high school level transition into college and college sports, and parents, and what kind of helping them prepare for that as well, and helping them engage kind of their own experience in sports, and what that can look like for them so they can support their student athlete even better.
No, absolutely. And again, you and I've spoken off camera here a couple times. I do a lot of high school presentations, but this is an area that I don't touch on at all, because I just don't have that expertise like someone like you. So you mentioned that you have some speaking engagements coming up here in Florida and other places with parent groups. Share with our listeners, because ADs are kind of let's say a different crowd. Okay, what are some of the things that you're going to be talking about at these upcoming speaking engagements, and why do you think it's important for athletic directors to have you come in, someone with your background, to share these concepts and tools, if you will, to parents, student athletes, and coaches?
Sure. So first off, I'd say for athletes, just helping them, it's getting even trickier to me with NIL and kind of that bleeding into high school and all of the changes going on, the transfer portal. So helping them just know what questions to ask before they decide what university they even just are going to go to. One of those is one topic on what are the questions you ask? What are you looking for with coaches? What are the questions when you go on visits? What about the university? What are things to look out for? And then like once you get there, who are the resources? Who are the people you want to connect with from an athlete perspective? What are some things to do to help kind of expand your field of friends and different resources you'll have on campus that most athletes are going to have a certain allotment for their being an athlete. And then there's other ones that you don't really even necessarily learn about because you're so busy in your athlete world, but can be really great and helpful people from a mental health perspective, to career services and things like that. And then from a parent perspective, helping parents almost self-reflect a little on like their engagement with their student athlete, like what are the conversations they're having with them? What are their experiences when they're watching their student athlete play? What are the things they're looking for and helping their athlete process through and choose a university they want to play for, and what they should expect when their athletes gets there. So what I've experienced watching what I've done, but also what I've experienced watching college freshmen and sophomores and the parent relationship dynamic and some of those things too, for them to know and resources they need to know to when what is that shift to from them. Sometimes parents have an opinion about how their child is playing in various ways. They want to bring that to the player or their child or to other players or to the coach or the AD. So there's a big shift in college when that happens. And so even helping them understand the differences and encouraging them to kind of just get a different perspective on what that looks like, because for some it will be their first child to play at a college level, And so, yeah, those are all the various topics. There's more than that, but those are some key ones to include.
That's just so important. And again, I'm a retired AD, but I wish we would have had the opportunity to bring you in to speak to some of our parents and student athletes. Can you think of a moment, maybe a success story or a aha moment that you've experienced when talking with a parent or maybe a coach or an AD that you can share with us?
Sure. So there's actually two that come to mind, and I can briefly share both. But one of them is just, the relationship with the parents. This one was actually at UF, and working with a parent and kind of explaining to them as I saw them, I think sidelines one day and just chatting with them, and they were very concerned about their child and what was next and all these things, and getting to talk to them about like the bigger picture of what it's like to be a student athlete and what are the things that they're probably having to process too, of like the weight of the decisions on what they transition to next, or playing or not playing, or just some of the factors of like, as a parent, sometimes you're in your parent role, but from me, I get to be an outside perspective of like, have you considered they might be experiencing these feelings? Or have you considered that they also are weighing in all of these other aspects of their life when they're making this choice? Or even having a new coach. That's another big one. It's like, you do realize like that's a really big disruption for them as an athlete, because they're basically trying out again to be a position they've been recruited for. And so I think even seeing that when the transition at Florida with different coaches and trying to help the parents honestly understand what a big shift that is was a huge one. And then another one was similar. It was just, a parent that was just stressed out about all of the playing time. I think, quite frankly, the identity for parents can be similar in their child's playing time, and the concern there and the wrestle there. And so just sitting with them and listening to them, and then also getting to share, like, it is difficult, like, and how are you approaching that when you're engaging your child? Because it's going to be difficult for her too. And having those conversations around that. And even I think I push back a little bit with parents. I'm like, where's that coming from for you? Like, where's your identity role, in that, in your child's life? There can be a lot of meshing together there. And so I'm not afraid to offer some insightful questions that might make them have to go inside to check themselves first.
Yeah, no, great stuff. And again, with ADs now, we don't talk about dealing with parents. We talk about partnering with parents, to help them on the journey. We're not giving them the keys to the car, but they're along for the ride. So let's try to make it a pleasant one for everybody, especially the athlete. Shelley, really appreciate you sharing some time with our listeners today on a ton of great topics. But we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you spent some time in that athletic director chair, but with your other experiences, we're going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But we're only going to let you put 3 things in the toolbox. So right now, we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsored this segment. When we come back, we're going to see what Shelley Lyle is going to put into her new athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. Of course, we want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic surveys are about connections, and they're going to connect you with a group you probably already hear from, the complainers, the people that want to gripe about everything. But that's really only a small percentage. Athletic surveys is also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And that's tremendously valuable information to have, especially when you're talking to a frustrated parent or principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with somebody I want to call a new friend to the show, Shelley Lyle, soccer player at the University of Florida, national team member, entrepreneur, and part of the University of Florida sport management faculty. Tremendous background in athletics, but right now I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. but I'm only going to let her put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Shelley, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Okay, well, the first one is to listen. And I don't mean to just listen to everything you're hearing. I think it's the asking questions and listening to the questions, and listening to the culture that you're in, the environment you're stepping into. So that's players, that's the actual school, that's the local culture, that's the conference culture, all of those things. You got to listen to what you're stepping into, I think, first and foremost, before you make steps and decisions for change. Second is to learn. So similar thing, learning about your coaches, players, parents, administration, state laws, like learn all of the conferences. Just be a learner and just try and absorb, especially in the first 3 to 6 months, who you're working with and what you're stepping into. And then communication, I would say, is a big one too. I know that's very popular, but communication is critical, right? Because systems don't work without good communication on all areas. So that's just, over communicating. I found that in particular with athletes, like if they know the details, it can be really helpful. And the parents as well, like as long as they feel like they know and understand the schedule and what's going on, I think you'll find they're a little more peaceful and there's more clarity, and that is always helpful, because people don't like ambiguity and the unknown. And then I do have one more, but community. So I will say, I'm sorry to add one more, but community, really important to find people who are like-minded and can be in the trenches with you when you have the issues that go awry and you're like, am I doing this right? And they can kind of point you back to your true self and to your core values to help guide you on your decision making.
Well, you probably saw me scribbling all those things down. Tremendous. And I love your listening one. And we get that a lot, but how you talked about listening to the culture of where you're at. It's one of those tools that I wish I would have had in my toolbox a lot earlier in my career. Just great, great stuff. Shelley, one more time, if one of our listeners wants to reach out, add you to their network, and listeners, I think you got a tremendous resource here. Find out more about integrative coaching. Where do they go? What's the emails? What's the websites?
Sure, pretty easy. My website is shelleylyle.com. You can scroll through and see the integrative coaching information, and then there's consulting and training. Just click on the contact button at the top, and that will send you to my email, which is info@shelleylyle.com. And I will reply back to you. But yes, that would be you can utilize me as another resource, conversations, training, consulting, all of that. Would love to work with some of you. So thanks again for this opportunity and to share.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thank you for coming on and sharing with our listeners. Um, just a reminder for our listeners, we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day, sharing best practices, either with interviews or short segments. So come back next time for another great episode of the Educational AD. And Shelley, thanks so much again. All the best in all of your endeavors for the rest of the school year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, we're going to have to get you back on the show and do an update. Very cool stuff. Okay.
Awesome. Would love to.
Once again, listeners, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.